The following programme contains flash photography.
The most glamorous of industries built upon beauty, we often don't acknowledge fashion's varying sides. Amid reports of water poisoning in factories and workers in hospital, ethics in fashion can no longer be sidelined.
There's a very fine line between exploitation and adequate employment.
There is a relationship, there is a thread. Things have gone too far.
2 months ago, Bangladesh suffered from the biggest modern-day industrial disaster the world has seen. On April 24th, we saw the loss of over 1,000 Bangladeshi garment workers as an 8-storey building collapsed. But for those who have been looking at factories and industry in the country, this was a disaster waiting to happen. In our special report, looking at ethical fashion, we examined the industry with the biggest contributor to Bangladesh's growing GDP. And a collapse which opened our eyes to factories in Bangladesh, where for so long we've been looking with our eyes half shut.
We can't continue like this, and I personally think that we've been brainwashed to make us think that it's democratic to buy a t-shirt for $5. But a few years ago, there wasn't this supply. A t-shirt for $5 didn't exist.
Just over 2 months ago in Savar, a sub-district in Greater Dhaka, the Rana Plaza collapsed. This isn't the only factory disaster to have hit Bangladesh in recent times, but by far the biggest. At the end of last year, there was a factory fire which killed 117 people. And just a week after the collapse in April, another fire incident led to the death of 21 workers. Over the last few weeks, hundreds of workers have been taken to hospital as a result of drinking poisonous water.
বাথরুম থেকে পানি এনে খাইলাম, খাওয়ার পর এই কতক্ষণ আবার কাজ করলাম, একটুক্ষণ 10-15 মিনিটের মতো করার পর আবার মানে শরীর কেমন জানি করতেছে, মাথা ঘুরাইতেছে আর ভিতরে জ্বলাপোড়া করতেছে। জ্বলাপোড়া করার পর ছুটি নিয়ে বাইরে হয়ে গেল। বাইরে হইবার পর মানে মেইন গেটে পাড়া দিছি, তারপর অজ্ঞান হয়ে গেছি, তারপর আর বলতে পারবো না।
These are not strange occurrences within Bangladeshi industry, but the scale of devastation and sheer velocity of the collapse caught the world's attention.
Transformational moment where in fact the issues that your country has faced with labor rights, with fire safety, with building codes, this is the moment that the government in the lead, along with the business sector, labor and consumers, with support from the international community, can really make a difference and ensure that the very strong brand that is Bangladesh will continue forever.
The collapse of the building led to the loss of 1,127 lives, left 2,500 injured. The Bangladeshi Army, fire service personnel, police and rapid action battalion troops all assisted with the rescue effort, and volunteers used bolts of fabric to assist survivors to escape from the building. The United Nations offered to send expert rescue teams with dogs, micro-cameras and other equipment to the site, but this offer was rejected by Dhaka authorities. Bangladeshi economist Kazi Kholikuzzaman Ahmed, who was a part of the 2007 Nobel Peace Prize winning team, didn't seem surprised.
I would have done the same thing if I was the government, because they were offering some people to come and help, and not any machinery. We didn't need any people because we have experts in our own country. What we don't have is the heavy machinery. So if they had offered that, I'm sure the government would have accepted. So it would have been an interference, probably, rather than help.
Speaking in London, campaigner Livia Firth told me that the Rana Plaza collapse highlighted the plight of workers who for so long have been ill-treated.
There is a lot of people who have been working in the world of ethical fashion for many, many years, and they all knew that that was an accident about to happen. You know, in fact, some people expected something like this to happen 10 years ago. what the person who didn't know is the normal consumer who doesn't ask questions and goes and buy on the high street garments without wondering where have they made, how have they made, who made them. So the Rana Plaza disaster opened a huge this huge platform and hopefully made the normal consumer understand what are the implications of the spending power.
The building contained clothing factories, a bank, apartments and several other shops. All of the other units were closed after finding cracks in the building. Further warnings had been issued just a day before the collapse in order to avoid using the plaza, yet the garment workers working inside were ordered to return the following day. Supervising officers declared the building to be safe, and the workers were threatened to have their pay withheld if they didn't show up for work. Alan Duncan is a Minister for International Development. He spoke to me about the support being offered by the British government and what Britain is doing to ensure a better working environment for workers in Bangladesh.
The £18 million was an announcement we were planning anyway, and as part of our extensive, nearly £200 million a year development programme in Bangladesh. We do a number of things. First of all, we try and equip people, particularly women, to know their employment rights and to be able to band together to make sure that their rights are delivered. We are trying to make sure that people, again, mostly women, have the skills training to be able to hold down the jobs in the first place. So we are trying to empower some of the poorest people in the country to hold down a job, have a livelihood for themselves and their family, and to be able to go from one building block to another building block for themselves, and then, of course, ultimately for the country as a whole.
As well as the bank and shops, the Rana Plaza housed a number of separate garment factories manufacturing apparel for well-known brands, including Walmart, Benetton, Mango, Matalan, Monsoon and Primark.
In the good ones, they're properly employed. In the bad ones, it's probably fair to say they are exploited. So we want to make sure that the standards are set universally and that things are followed through properly. So we will really focus on this sector very, very, very hard over the coming months.
In the immediate aftermath of the incident, the Dhaka City Development Authority filed a case against the owner of the building housing the factories. Sahil Rana was found days later close to the Indian border and arrested. Rana was arrested on accounts of negligence, illegal construction and persuading workers to continue working even after cracks had appeared in the building. The Rana Plaza was built on swampy ground, and much of the blame for its collapse has been attributed to this and its shoddy construction. The equipments used to construct the factory have been labelled as of extremely poor quality. Following the collapse, it's been revealed that the upper 4 floors had been built without permission and that the building wasn't built to support factories and the weighty equipment involved in garment making. Rana is a man with political connections, a local leader for the Juba League, the youth faction for the governing Awami League. It is thought that he was able to secure the contracts to build the plaza through his political connections. He was arrested in grandeur fashion, but many are unconvinced that the culprits will actually be held to account.
It's not last few years, it has been happening for years and years and years. One of the main reasons, I think, is because the people who are responsible are not brought to justice. It never happened. People are caught maybe initially, an inquiry may be instituted, but we don't see any results in terms of these people getting the punishment they deserve. So that's why I think it's keeping happening again and again and again.
Alan Duncan told me that the British government would be keeping a close eye to ensure those responsible would be held to account.
It is contemptible that people were made to go back into a building when cracks had been found. The Brack Bank evacuated its people and did not send them back. Indeed, it said they must not go back. Other factory owners said people will not be paid if they don't go back, and then the building collapsed. So I hope these prosecutions will be followed all the way through, and we will be very, very angry and loud in our condemnation if political influence is allowed to get people out of a proper court trial.
Retailers Primark, Loblaw and Matalan announced compensation packages for the victims in the immediate aftermath of the incident, stating they would be working to support the families of the victims, and in order to improve safety standards inside factories, they signed a new safety accord with other companies working in Bangladesh.
Following the Rana Plaza disaster, there has been this historical agreement, the Bangladeshi safety agreement, that has been signed by over 40 brands in Europe. And some of the American brands are now working on signing an American version of it. And obviously, it's fantastic that so many brands came together for the first time and took responsibility and took charge. Now we have to see how they're going to follow it up, what's going to happen, whether in a few months' time no one will ever talk again about Rana Plaza.
51 companies have so far signed up to the legally binding safety accord, working to offer financial support for fire safety and building improvements in the wake of the garments disaster. Arcadia, along with at least 16 other companies, refused to sign the accord as the deadline passed. In a statement on their site, they say, Bangladesh, however, does represent only a small percentage of our total supply chain. We feel that it is important to point out Topshop's purchases from Bangladesh are less than £25,000 to date this year. However, in order to show support for the initiative that this accord is proposing to undertake, we as a group will be signing up. This will be done on the condition that we understand the final costs to us, which to date has not been made clear. The accord has been signed by many other high street retailers, aiming to compel retailers to pay for rigorous and independent public inspections and blacklist any factories unwilling to comply.